Hello friends, today we're going to talk about operating companies in Montenegro. As you know from my other videos, a huge number of people, especially Russians, open companies solely to obtain a residence permit and don't actually conduct any business. But there are exceptions. I don't know the exact number, but probably about 10 to 15% of those who come here actually run a real business. First and foremost, this applies to programmers and various other types of remote workers. That is, things like design, advertising, and similar fields. So, if you plan to run a real business, you definitely need a fiscalization program. What is fiscalization? If you issue an invoice to someone or accept payment in cash, you need a special program. What does it do? You issue an invoice and the data is automatically sent to the tax authorities indicating that a certain company has issued a specific invoice. The same applies to cash payments. When you print a receipt on the cash register, the data is automatically sent to the tax authorities, showing that this company has received this amount of money. And for this, you need to purchase a special program. We provide fiscalization connection services for basically a small fee. So you can contact us. We handle the registration of the post-fiscal program. I don't know if it's the best on the market or not, but I use it myself. And in fact, we're about to stop using it, not because we don't like it, but simply because we've purchased a new accounting program, by the way, the best and most expensive one available on the market in Montenegro. That function is available there. It's implemented very conveniently, and it's just easier for us to do everything through our own accounting program so that everything is connected with other operations. Otherwise, I actually like post-fiscal, and so does everyone else. And if we hadn't bought this new accounting software, I would have continued using it. Honestly, the processing times are not short, so you really need to think about this well in advance. It's not like you can suddenly issue an invoice and accept a cashless payment on the spot. No, you need to think about this ahead of time. On average, the guys from this company set up post-fiscal in about 2 months. So you need to consider this to plan optimally at the moment you open the account, because opening accounts takes a long time. You already have all the necessary information, you already have some time, or soon there will be a tax inspection, you have a residence permit, and accordingly, personal identification. So you can already prepare the documents, possibly with our help, and order this program. That is, do it at the same time as opening the account, so you don't have to wait another 2 months later for them to set up post-fiscal. And now I want to briefly show you what this program looks like. This is interesting, first of all, for those who are generally thinking about switching and wondering which software to choose. And secondly, my clients need this because everyone asks me how to use this program. So now, basically, I'll briefly show you. All right, let's get started. Suppose you've just purchased the program and logged in. Now we need to set it up. Settings are cheaper. So we go to this tab and land on this beautiful page. It will already be partially configured. That is, the post-fiscal team will have already entered some of your data, but not all of it. Click on the edit button, this blue one here, and check everything. First of all, make sure to fill in the required field, specifically your company name and VAT. That is, VAT refers to value added tax. If you are a VAT payer, you will have a specific number. This is the decision number. You need to enter it here. But most likely, if your company is new, you are not yet a VAT payer, so this field will be empty for you. Next, enter your company's tax identification number, INN, and full name PIB here, and check if it's missing, of course. If it's already there, you don't need to enter anything. If it's not, then enter it. Check your company registration decision for your address, and enter the address. Next, check if there is a so-called domestic account, meaning a current internal account. Enter it in this field and check the currency details. For most foreigners who have moved to Montenegro, their company is engaged in the export of services. Accordingly, all or at least a significant portion of your partners will be foreigners who will transfer pay you via SWIFT. And accordingly, you need to provide the currency details, that is the IBAN and SWIFT. Then you have the optional fields. You can fill them in if you want or leave them blank. Contact information, authorized person, in other words, who issued this invoice, and so on. Basically, you don't have to fill them out. Once filled in, click the sympathize button, that is save. So how do you actually make use of all of this in real situations? First, you need to create partners, that is, the entities that will pay you for your services. If the entity you are working with is a legal person, please just go to the company tab and simply add a new record for the company. I won't save it right now, but I'll show you exactly how it's done step by step so you can see the process in detail and understand each part of it. Enter a company name, for example, Horns and Hooves. Aha! Enter its tax identification number. Enter its address. These are required fields. You must fill them in. The other fields can be left blank. The only thing is, make sure to indicate whether this company is a VAT payer. In other words, whether it is under the VAT system or not. Once you have filled it out, click the sympathize button, that is save. You save it, and then after clicking this button, the name of the partner you just created will appear here. Click the partner button and the company will be added here. Here you can see all post-fiscal users, as well as anyone else who has been added here. And here only the partners that you have created and for whom you clicked the create partner button are shown. So this is how you add a legal entity partner to the system. If your payer is an individual, the procedure is similar but slightly different. This is not done in the Enterprise tab, but in the Partners tab. Here you see a new partner, an individual. Also filled out the form, pressed the button Sympathize, and this partner appeared here. Next, you need to fill in the type of services you provide, that is the rate. So let's also create a new entry. All right, just a minute. Let me adjust the microphone now. And then we click here to enter some SE, some kind of service, for example, programming. We select the unit of measurement. That is, what is it measured in? Well, if it's programming, most likely it will be days or months, for example, a month. Then we select the payment amount per month, let's say 2,000. The system asks with VAT or without VAT. We choose with VAT. And since you are most likely a service exporter and not yet a VAT payer, we click the button to see select exempt. That is, you are not a VAT payer, you are exempt. If you become a VAT payer, but again you export service, meaning you do not pay VAT, but you are no longer exempt from VAT, simply select with VAT at a 0% rate. But for new companies that are not yet VAT payers, select exempt. And again, click the save button. And now right here you will see the rate you created, that is the type of service you set up. I have the ones I use entered here, you will have your own. So you have a partner, you've added the partner, you have a type of service, and now it's time to start creating a calculation. There are two options in the system. As you can see, there is a pre-calculation, which I personally don't use, and there is a calculation. What's the difference? For every payment you receive, a fiscal calculation must be generated. So this is the tab you need. However, if you're not sure whether your partner will actually pay you, you can start by creating a pre-calculation. A pre-calculation is not the basis for a payment, but it's more like you notify the client that they can pay you to certain bank details, a certain amount for specific goods or services. If the client does pay, you must then create a fiscal calculation, give it to your accountant so they can file it in your folder and keep it stored properly. Pre-calculations and calculations are created in the same way. I'll show you later. Right now, I just want to explain the difference to you. So a fiscal calculation is absolutely required, but if you wish, you can create it after the payment has been made. I create fiscal calculations right away for all companies. Usually I do this at the beginning of the month, and for those who haven't paid me, I simply void those calculations later. Here, in each calculation, there is a function if. You hover over these three dots. There's a void function, which means to delete. That's what I use. But many people, especially now in retail, work like this. First, they create a pre-calculation. If someone doesn't pay, it's no big deal. If someone does pay, then they create a fiscal calculation and send it to the customer. So basically, there are two options. Choose the one that suits you best. But creating a calculation is very simple. Here again, there are gotovinci vinci, that is, cash and non-cash options. I don't have cash payments, I don't use them, so I always create a non-cash calculation. We select a partner that we created earlier and set their payment term. By the way, note that you can select a past date, future dates aren't allowed, but backdating is possible. For example, I chose May honest, even though today is May 13th. And as a rule, I usually set the payment deadline to the end of the month. We also select whether this partner is a VAT payer. Since most of my clients are small businesses, the majority of them are not VAT payers. But things might be different for you. We select a service, that is a rate, and then click Add to Calculation. So we've added this rate, and note that you can have several rates here. For example, let's suppose for a moment we've added one for programming, and we also want to add another separate rate, perhaps say for design. So we've completed an order for the client that includes both programming and design. We've added two rates, Then we click the Save and Fiscalize button, and we get an invoice with these two rates. And the invoices look quite decent. All the necessary information is here. It just needs a moment to load. Here you have your company name, that is the seller's name, the address, and the phone number. Well, I entered the phone number. If you don't enter it, it won't appear. There's the TIN, VAT number, and banking details, both domestic, meaning for Montenegro, for internal payments, and for international payments. In other words, once your partner receives this invoice, they can pay it without any issues. And then you can see that the rate you set is the amount shown here. I am a VAT payer, so my invoice includes VAT. However, if I were exporting a service, then even though I am a VAT payer, there would be no VAT on my invoice. Let me show you an example. For example, here. Legal work during export. That is, you see, I have this set up here. VAT rate 0%. So I've prepared such a rate in advance. Well, the only thing is I later change the amount when I create the invoice. When you create an invoice, you can edit any rate. This is done quite simply. So for example, you have 75 euros. Well, for instance, with this company, there was some very large amount of work. For example, it's a company with a large number of employees. It's accounting labor costs for it are much higher. Accordingly, I apply some increasing coefficient for it and change the amount. That is, everything here can be edited. Well, not absolutely everything, but a lot of things. For example, again, a person might not have paid me for services for half a year. I was submitting reports for him, but he didn't pay for 6 months. So I issue him an invoice, say for 6 months. Well, that's more or less how it works. The program is very convenient, it's intuitive. You don't need to be afraid of not knowing Serbian. There are literally about 10 words here, and even many of them are obviously understandable, even if they're unfamiliar. I've just shown what's important. There's also izveštaji, which means you can view, report, show many invoices you've issued, for what amount, how much VAT, and so on. I don't use this feature yet, because I think it's not clear enough, not convenient enough. There is the possibility in theory. They claim that they will eventually implement it. I don't remember where it is. Here, language. So Montenegrin, English, and Russian is planned as well. Well, it's been planned, but honestly, it's already been about 1.5 years since this program has existed, and they still haven't done it. They've probably abandoned those plans a long time ago. But in principle, I want to emphasize again that this isn't a problem, because as you can see, everything is pretty clear and quite simple. The program is available. First of all, if you don't want to figure it out yourself, although if you want to, you can, then you need to pay us. Secondly, you need to pay for a digital certificate in euros. And as for the program itself, it's technically provided for free, but it does have a monthly fee. The monthly fee is 10 euros plus VAT. So with VAT, that's 12 euros and 10 cents. And you pay this amount each month. Overall, these aren't very large expenses. As you can see, it's quite easy and convenient to use. It's intuitive to use. You don't need to be afraid if you don't know Serbian, because I literally know maybe a dozen words in Serbian myself. In short, there's really nothing complicated about it. You pay for the program from your company's account. They send me the invoices by email to the address I provided when registering the program. And you print out this invoice, give it to your accountant, fill out the payment order, take it to the bank, and pay it from your company's account. Another point I'd like to discuss is how to issue invoices to foreign clients. I've already mentioned earlier today that invoices must be issued through this program. It doesn't matter whether it's for local clients or foreign ones, but the invoice that you create here, not all foreign clients will simply understand. Because the invoice is in Serbian, and some clients are Russian, some might be English speaking, and others might speak yet another language. So you can make things easier. A lot of people do it this way too. You issue the invoice in this program so that it's recorded in the accounting system, and then you create the same invoice but in another language in Word. The main thing is that it has the same invoice number, the same amount, and the same payer. And you send this to your client and let them pay. You have the required fiscalized invoice in your accounting system, and the necessary fiscalized invoice is registered on the SCF portal. What you actually send to the client isn't really that important. All the data will match after payment. And one more question. In the program, you can only issue invoices in euros, but you can still accept other currencies. In particular, when you open a bank account, they are always multi-currency. Well, my account I think is in 5 currencies, but I don't remember exactly. Obviously, aside from euros and maybe dollars, though I'll never actually use dollars for anything, but still, in reality, the account is in several currencies. But at the same time, the program only allows you to issue invoices in euros. So what should you do? You just issue the invoice according to the exchange rate. So for example, if it's 1,000 euros in dollars, that will be a bit more most likely. So you check the exchange rate and issue the invoice to the client in dollars at that rate. When he pays, there will be some difference there. It won't be very big, but there will be some difference. First of all, the exchange rate might have changed and the banks might have taken some fees during the transfer. The accountant will simply record this as an exchange rate difference. Accordingly, it will either be an exchange rate gain or an exchange rate loss, and also bank expenses. So the accountant handles all of this. There's nothing to be afraid of here. You don't need to urgently change invoices and you don't need to argue with the client. This is all absolutely normal. Nothing terrible has happened here. So I've just shown you what a non-cash payment looks like. I can't show you a cash payment because I personally don't use cash payment. I don't have that module. I haven't ordered or bought it because I simply don't need it. If I'm expecting a payment from someone, I issue an invoice for a non-cash payment and the person goes to the bank and pays. And for accepting cash payments, you also need this program plus a special device. Honestly, I don't even know what it's properly called these days, but it's not a cash register. There used to be cash registers, as you know, in all stores. But now there's some other modern device. You can also order it from the same people who offer Post Fiscal. Their website features some of the terminals they offer. Probably you could buy some other terminal somewhere else and connect it all together, but I think it's more convenient, simpler, and more reliable. When you buy everything in one place, then it will definitely work. So that's how this video turned out. I hope it was helpful. Goodbye, everyone.